Hey guys, Robby Row here, another breakdown. It is Paul Skenes Day. Paul Skenes Day. Guys, I said Paul Skenes Day. Frickin' Skenes. Let's go. I love watching baseball. I love watching pitching. I love the frickin' MLB.TV app. And the fact that this donkey is making his debut today makes it a great day. So I'm pumped to deliver this mechanical breakdown. We're going to be going over basically the entire system of how I perceive pitching mechanics. I'm going to challenge myself to do it under 10 minutes because I got a couple different videos. I do got a shout out, so hopefully this doesn't cut too much into my time, but shout out to OnForm. OnForm is the app that I use to do these mechanical breakdowns on my iPad. The software that I use to tie all this into the computer is called ScreenFlow. You can check out all of my software and content equipment right up in this link right here. Go ahead and click that, and that'll take you to a page that includes everything that I use for content creation and podcasting. Second shout out is the Indianapolis Indians, the AAA team for the Pittsburgh Pirates, team that Skenes played for. I am genuinely impressed with the work they're doing on their social media. I would not have majority of these videos if it wasn't for the media team of the Indianapolis Indians. Shout out to you guys. You guys are killing it. Much love. I appreciate you guys. So the way that I'm going to organize this particular mechanical breakdown is I'm going to go start with talking about a little bit of the personal identification system that I have. If you're not familiar with that, if you haven't looked at any of my stuff, I would encourage you to head over to the description of this video and check out some of those links. I'll include some links to certain mechanical components that I talk about a lot, and I'll even include a link if you are a fellow pitching nerd like myself to take a look at my newest ebook, A Complete Guide to Pitching Mechanics, that includes all of how I'm going to organize this breakdown with further context. So be sure to hit that link up there to give that a check out. So first things first, we're going to talk about the personal identification system, right? Is Skenes an accelerator driver or hybrid? Then we're going to go into the two initial components, which is the setup, how he's setting himself up, whether it be the mechanics of the windup or the stretch. Since the setup is in a direct correlation to the initial move, we'll go setup, initial move right off the bat, and then we'll dive into the lower body mechanics for Skenes. Once we get into the lower half, we're going to be talking about the drive leg mechanics, into the hip rotation mechanics, into the lead leg block mechanics. And then for the second part of this video, we're going to be looking at the upper half mechanics, which is, gentlemen, the arm action mechanics, cross your T's, the trunk rotation mechanics, and the glove side. It's hard to do eyes on this app, glove side mechanics. Just a quick recap of the accelerators and drivers and the personal identification system is a basic understanding for how you should organize your movements as a pitcher, based off of your body type, based off how you move through space, based off any anatomical restrictions, based off any mobility, any type of, like, you can be as specific as you want with it, you can be as broad as you want with it. But if we just looked at Paul Skenes' delivery and just looked at the way that this dude is built, he is an absolute donkey. You can see, obviously the driver group, the guys that are putting more energy and force into the ground to amplify their ground force production, these guys like Skenes are going to be better equipped to do so because you have more mass available. You have more mass available to put into the ground. He's not in any hurry to get going down the slope. He knows that his sweet spot is a little bit head back over the back leg. He gets a great load, but it's not an aggressive load like you would typically see from some drivers. Some drivers will really amplify, get close to 90 degrees in their hinge. Skenes doesn't need to. Skenes is more about the stability aspect of it, which we will get into when we do talk about the drive leg mechanics. So it's safe to say, based off of his body type, based off how he's moving, he has a pretty good idea of how he wants to move. Most hip coil guys like this that kind of do this pelvic shift pre-drive phase will be pretty good visual example for drivers, guys that are going to spend more time in the load phase. So now we have that understanding. I think he's 6'5", 240, 6'4", 240, 6'6", 240, 6'6", 230, 6'6", 250. Who knows? So now we have the setup. Setup is an easy one for me, especially with a guy like Skenes, because you can see what he's doing with the hands, with the feet. I am a big advocate, guys. Big advocate of rhythmic movements in the initial move are going to influence timing, postures, and alignments later down the road. What do I mean by that? The lead foot and the throwing hand are going to be connected. So I'm looking for some pendulum, some rhythmic move here that's going to allow him and allow his body to feel naturally flowing into his drive phase, which is the period of time as you descend from the peak of your leg lift, and that phase in which you're driving into the ground, but also rotating, transferring, snapping, and then anchoring down, right? That's going to be another thing that I love about Skenes' delivery is the initial move. Hands go down, the pelvis turns, feet get shifted. You're going to see this little toe tap here. I'm a big advocate for this little toe tap because it's the rhythm that he needs to stall out his hands. So we're looking here at that foot, right? So that little tap rhythmic is going to be the move that stalls his hands just before his hands go up and just before the lead leg goes up, right? So you see that, just a little tap. It's going to create that little rock. Eyes come off the target, right? So you see this eyes off the target. Now you're a little bit more natural, flowy, rhythmic, more physical than it is a little bit more robotic, right? I talked about this in my Yamamoto breakdown. You can check that out up here. The eyes coming off the target like a Zach Wheeler frees you up a little bit more from the physical portion of the delivery in hopes to better, remain athletic throughout the entirety of your throw. Now the setup into the initial move, right? So we talked about the setup, the rhythmic move, and the setup is going to lead right into the initial move. And what Skenes does in his setup with his hands going down, that pendulum act that I just talked about, it allows him to accomplish what he's set out to accomplish within his initial move is a little bit patience. Patience, guys, loaders, right? Big ground force energy producers. They need rhythmic movements to make sure that they're not getting too far caught in like the game speeding up and getting too far down the slope, right? That's probably the hardest aspect for drivers to grasp is the initial move for us. Even though initial moves are sometimes high tempo rhythmic movements, doesn't mean it needs to be in a rush, right? And that's why I love with Skenes, and you can see this from the back view. Again, shout out Indianapolis Indians, the hands, right? So he has a timing mechanism. You can see it right here. Again, this is warm-ups, right? Like that's a warm-up throw. So I will say it probably changes. This is probably amplified, but he's a glove hover, ball hover guy. And then by the time that he's ready to go is going to be when he kind of taps, right? So you can see that now as he goes into that flow. So that's that initial move that's setting himself up for what he's trying to accomplish in the delivery itself, being loading, stabilizing the drive leg, as you can see, spending a little bit more time in the backside because you're just trying to be patient for that arm to come along, right? So the hand coming out of the glove and then going back in when it comes time to then go into your load is going to allow him to feel the rhythmic flow of his descend into his drive phase, which again, when we look at the drive leg mechanics, we can probably just jump right into the next checkpoint being the drive leg mechanics. Absorb, produce, store, the drive leg stability. Remember, when we look at force production, force absorption, all these things, if the force is greater than the capacity that we own, then there's going to be an issue, right? There's going to be a breakdown. There's going to be a brain threat determination that's going to be like, we got to get out of this. We got to collapse, blah, blah, blah. Skenes does an absolutely incredible job of being a driver that truly understands what his drive leg needs to do. Like I said, the visual appearance of this drive leg isn't, of that 90-degree sit, hinged, load, hold it, but he does exactly what he needs to do, right? So as you come down from peak leg lift, there's energy to be had, there's energy to be absorbed, and there's energy to be produced into the ground, right? We talk about drivers, their sole energy or their big energy group is the ground force production that we're going to be putting into the ground. Now, you can see this move, again, the drive leg mechanics, right? Absorbing, producing, like that's stable as it gets, boys, right? You can just see he's favoring that a little bit internal rotation. He's not going to have that extreme like vertical shin, so to speak. But what you do see is look at the torso. I talk about this a lot in my coachings, in my ebooks, in my online services, how we can utilize other portions of our body to help accomplish the goal of, say, like the drive leg, right? So this instant, the torso and the glove side are going to help aid in that loading phase, as you can see right in this. Like this video is probably 45 degrees off, and you can see that there's this pelvic coil that he does, kind of wraps his lead hip around, closed it off. I remember I had a little league coach that gave me my first ever mechanical cue, which was like show your numbers. to the hitter. And this is kind of similar to what Skenes is doing in terms of like other components, which we have exceptional hand separation timing, hands separated, right, from the glove before his head's really even in the drive phase. And this is something that, it's funny too, because he's with Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh, for those of you guys who don't know, I was there from 12 to 2014. And one of the big things that they taught was like everything that happens with your hands and your head is going to happen in a box over the rubber. So if you picture a box and your drive foot in that box, picture your head having a pole, right, all the way down into your drive foot. Like you can't get going until you have completed all the checklist of what has to happen in this box, which is like hand separation, the loading, glove side extension, right? Like all these things have to happen in the box. And it's funny that Pittsburgh picked him up because he does this already, right? Like breaks his hands in the box. You can see the head still back over here. And now everything driving is going to be from this stable drive foot with a little bit of preset ankle turn, if you will. All right. So drive leg mechanics, money. Now the hip rotation mechanics, right? So and when we look at the drive leg, absorb, produce, store, we want to store that energy for a little bit throughout the drive phase, right? Especially drivers, guys that are relying upon a lot of ground force energy. They gotta check the box of storing some of that energy, or else like we're not going to have anything, right? We're not going to get anything back when it comes down to the actual throw. So now we look at the hip rotation mechanics. We look at the transferring of that drive leg, and we see that with Skenes, amazing. And a good general rule of thumb that I look at is the drive leg, the pelvis, the hips, right? Like these are going to start rotating, and that's going to be that transferring effect after we kind of have this storing mechanism in the drive leg, right? So there's a brief like descend with the lead leg, boom. Now we're entering our drive phase. You see how that drive leg stays kind of stacked for that little bit of duration of time. That's an authentic stability. Now, as the hips initiate rotation, right, you can see the knee coming down. So I was saying earlier, when the knee goes, when the hips rotate, general rule of thumb is that's when we want to initiate our retraction phase. Retract and rotate. So the elbow, horizontal shoulder abduction, and we see that right in that move, right? So hip rotation mechanics, it's tough to kind of isolate lower half and upper half mechanics like this. There's a lot that kind of coincides with each other, but specifically the hip rotation mechanics, we're looking at retract and rotate. If we can retract or rotate, that's just going to, again, it's just going to minimize the amount of leakages that are going to be present, right? There's a lot of potential leakages that can arise, especially when there's, instabilities. Oh, my Sony just died. Sony, you let me down. Oh, now I'm on you guys. My mic's can you see my mic is distracting me? The retract and rotate is just an easier visual to see if you're doing like any hands-on coaching, just to see like, are we grasping the understanding of segmentation mechanics, right? So in a little bit, we're going to be talking about three main energy systems that I see present in the pitching delivery. Ground force energy, which we talked about with the accelerators drivers, especially the driver focus. The acceleration energy, right? Forward momentum acceleration. That's obviously going to be a kind of separate component for accelerators, right? So we have your drivers, ground force. We have your accelerators that are obviously trying to utilize the slope, utilize gravity to propel themselves at a higher rate of speed, right? To block. And then third, we have the rotational energy, torque, segmentation, hip shoulder separation, right? Three major energy systems. So then what we try to accomplish is we know that we want to build up a ton of rotational energy, which is a byproduct of what I said earlier with retract and rotate. That just kind of allows that timing to be a little bit better, right? So if we don't allow retract and rotation to occur, we're probably going to leak the pelvis rotation a little bit. We might get stuck in counter rotation. A lot of drivers, one of the big struggles that they'll have, we talked about with the head positioning, snaking it, head back, right? Body goes where the head goes. So if we tilt the head back, right, there's this fine line of like, now we allow ourselves, right, what I was saying with the torso and the head, other pieces to the delivery, other pieces to your body that allow you to accomplish something. So the torso positioning being counter rotated, the head being a little bit back, that's going to allow him to really help load his drive leg and give him a better alignment and a better posture to be able to stabilize that. The fine line for a lot of drivers is they'll end up getting just stuck, right? So they end up getting so stuck that now what you do is you actually just fall into front foot strike, right? And get real light into front foot strike. But Skenes has the perfect mix because he holds authentic stabilizing, retract, rotate, pull back. And then now we create a ton of separation, ton of stretch, right? And then the block, hip rotation mechanics is going to be the transferring. And then obviously the lead leg block mechanics is going to be the blocking. So what are the pieces of the lead leg block that we want to obtain? To me, there's capacity, right? So obviously we have to have the stability to be able to absorb and then block all of that incoming force, right? Because we're blocking all forward and we're essentially trying to shoot it back up to absorb out of our throwing hand, right? So the lead leg block, we want to make sure our hips are into rotation. I look at maybe a 45-degree angle. Again, this is going to depend a lot on is the individual a foot rotator? I just looked at my camera that's dead. Is the individual that we're looking at is a foot rotator? A lot of guys will rotate the back foot, right? Or evert, which is the E version of the ankle. More guys that do like a hip hinge loading. I talk about this in my ebook. So if you guys want to dive deep into that that pitching mechanics sexual talk, check out the ebook. All right. Check out the ebook because you're going to like it. He is an everter right there. And then obviously a little peel for foot rotation. So that explains the ability to hold on to the drive leg hinge, which only is going to allow him to better be set up as a driver. And then more mechanics of the lead leg block. We want to make sure the hips are into rotation. We don't want to delay the mechanics of the freaking hip rotation, right? Don't resist rotation. I know I said this a long time ago, but I said something about resisting rotation, but I was talking about the upper extremity. Don't resist rotation of the lower half. I know we want to load, but don't get stuck, right? Don't get stuck loading. So we want the hips into rotation, right? As you see here, not fully rotated, but just enough to have initiated. Torso's neutral. This is what's going to create that rotational energy. It's going to be what's going to create that stretch. That's going to account for the majority of the energy that is shown in the delivery, right? So we want to make sure we're checking that box. Skenes does that. Now what we can do, since we're in the overall just optimal alignment, that's kind of my take on the lead leg block, is obviously there's some issues there, I think, with the mechanics of it, but if we set ourselves up for success, right, if we align ourselves up in a way that allows the body to naturally absorb and block this force, then we're going to be okay, which is hips into rotation. Lead leg's going to land in a little bit of knee flexion. There's going to be a little bit of bend. I don't want to land in extension, nor do I want freaking people to think about extending their lead knee, right, just to look like Verlander. It's going to be a byproduct, right, so the pelvis can rotate over that fixed femur, right, and then that move is going to then allow the knee to naturally extend, as you see that. So that's a sick picture, right? And this is picture perfect in the sense of like ball release, draw a straight line all the way down to the drive foot. This is a warm-up throw. So like I said, warm-up throws are tricky. You know, maybe in a regular throw that's 120 for the kid. His back foot's, more connected to the earth. I would just say that's an overall better, sequencing. But you can see the hips fully rotated now, and now he stays in extension. Extension of the hips at the end of the throw is going to be a pretty good visual of the most optimal transferring of all of our lower body energy, especially for the drivers, because we are not just producing energy into the ground, but we got to get that back, right? We got to get it back. So typically when we see hip extension at the timing of ball release, that's getting a lot of it back. So when we see flexion of the knee, we're not getting that back. When we see the lead leg block knee valgus over the front, we're not getting that back, right? So there's a lot of pieces, a lot of components that can affect the overall energy production and energy capturing. So let's see if we can go to another video. 2 new videos, hands go up. And that initial move just allows him to feel better in the load phase, right? Does that make sense, guys? So that initial move, that glove tap, that hand, the eyes look away, that's going to keep him patient, right? Sometimes if we fixate on the target, it can get us all jacked up and want to rush down the hill. And then the load, you see this pendulum, right? Forward, back, get something going back to then propel into a higher speed going forward. The front foot, right? That's a really good picture there of like the pelvis neutral, hips neutral, and then they snap at the time, right? Like the reason, if you were to ask me, what is the reason Skenes throws hard in comparison to everyone else, right? A, there's genetics, obviously, right? The dude was probably born and God came down and struck his right arm with a thunderbolt. Skenes was born to throw absolute cheddar biscuits. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. But he's also an extremely hard worker, freaking donkey, built, stacked, really good mental, and he does a lot of things in his delivery. I'm sure they're intentional, that set himself up for a really good power output, right? Like I think a lot of guys, the biggest struggle they have is like truly personally identifying how they should move on the mound. And it's no one's fault. It's just like we have a general idea, but then we have the idea too that surrounds this guy's built this way. We know that, you know, quote unquote, good pitching mechanics look this way. Now, like, where do we go? Where do we go with it for this individual, right? And that's kind of what I'm trying to do. And there's obviously more context in my ebook, therobbyrowshow.com/ebooks. What I say about Skenes and why he throws so hard is there's just no like big breakdowns. There's no major mechanical inefficiencies, right? Like there's a lot of things in his delivery. Yeah, you could talk about like, I don't love the way his elbow climbs like that, right? I don't love that because I do believe there's something in the scap that we can utilize to propel even greater arm speed. But if you just look at the overall like positioning and the alignments of the kid, right? Like the pelvis is closed, the lead foot doesn't open up. Like he does such a good job of kind of keeping torsion, keeping energy available. And then the transfer of that is whoosh, instead of where like I go wrong when I pitch is like, I do a good job in the initial, and then my transferring is like, you know what I'm saying? Instead of that quick like snap. When we snap, that's what I was saying with the velocity enhancing move. I know I'd name all these things. The velocity enhancing move is just looking at anchor point, hand positioning, torso, and hips, right? So it's going to account for the majority of our energy. So when we truly anchor down, right, when our lead leg takes on load, not when our front foot just touches the ground, when our lead leg takes on load, right, we want to make sure that we are allowing our lower body energy, right, this rotational energy to be captured by our throwing arm. And we do that by allowing the hand to be above, elbow to be in line, glove side's going to a little bit, glove side is going to pull out just a little bit, and this is going to create that little chest pec stretcher. So now we have rotational energy stretch, and we have this pec stretch to then all capture, and pull through, right? The hips pull the torso pulls the arm, right? The torso pulls the arm. This is how arm speed's created. As the torso pulls the arm with the hand in a more leveraged position, you're going to be able to capture a lot of this arm speed, right? Capture it. Oh, do it, Skener, right? That arm speed, that layback, that's all from the ability to position and align in accordance with the rotational energy that is available. The finish. And then force potential behind the baseball. Look at his fingers. Fingers through the baseball. And watch his finish after this throw. Just watch his overall energy that he has in his body. Just go get it, right? Like go get it. Almost Scherzer-like with that finish, right? Go get it. Go get it. For a guy that's super, I just looked at the dead camera, for a guy that's super rotational energy orientated and drive ground force production energy orientated, he does a super great, fantastic mustache job of catching back up in linear energy exertion, right? Like it's a move really tough for guys that are like super aggressive with counter rotation, because then they'll get spinny, and then your timing of getting that linear is very minute. But this is, you know, there's just so many things right. And I completely went over this 10-minute thing. Cool. Guys, that is all for my breakdown. I know I didn't specifically talk about like the glove side mechanics and how that differentiates, so I apologize, but we're going to have to do it a little bit later because I got to edit this video before the guy freaking takes the mound. All right. This is Skenes. That was my breakdown on the kid. Be sure to go check out the links in the description if you guys want more breakdown content like this. Let me know in the comments. Go ahead and let me know in the comments who you want me to break down next. I got Jared Jones on deck. followed by, I think I want to revisit a little Mason Miller breakdown. Who knows? All right, guys. Much love. God bless. Until next time. All right. Until next time, guys. I'm Robby Row. That was Paul Skenes. He's got a mustache, and it's freaking dope. And he wears his pants up. Shout out. MLB debut today. Skenes. I just love saying Skenes. Skenes. All right. Much love, guys. Until next time. See ya.